for joining us on this radiant morning here at CSLDallas. I'd like to invite you into your heart and into song. I open up from my heart. I open up from my heart. And I allow right here and now. I open up from my heart. I open up to the one. I open up to the one. I open up to the one. And I allow right here and now. I open up to the one.
If you'll go within with me, just open up, allowing the one presence, the one source of our very being, to flood through us, to settle in us, to settle in you and I. So glad to be here, so glad to be a part of this service today and this time together. We allow all the knowledge of the one source and the one life to settle in us as we are together in such a beautiful, beautiful day, open to receive, open to allow. And we affirm this and say together, and so it is.
So no matter what faith tradition you come from, or what path you've been on, or what path you might be on, just know that you're totally welcome here and unconditionally loved. You'll find out this is one of the most loving communities you could ever hope to step into. You can trust me on that. And so now that we've greeted our newcomers, we like to greet one another and hug one another, or at least extend a hand if you don't want to get all hugged and loved up. And so this is the time to do that.
One life living as you and me, the one light shining as you and me, one love loving as you and me, 'cause God is all there is. One life living feel the power of God in you. I feel the power. I feel the power of God in you. I feel the power.
So I just invite you to breathe it in. Seeing the kingdom of God in each other. Seeing the presence of life wherever we look. And we should not pretend that that is always easy, is it? We live, it seems as though we're always living in times of turmoil, turbulent times, whether there is war or terrorism or famine or homelessness or prejudice, whether the violence is somewhere out there, way far away, whether it's in our own backyards, whether it's in our own homes. And so as we move into our conversation today we're moving through our month of love, and it's an opportunity to think about love in a whole new way. Our theme for the month is to love you, love we. Not just the romantic love that we feel for our most beloved, or even the love that we have for our children or our family, but that larger sense of love that recognizes something in each and every person, in all beings everywhere. And so as we have started, Reverend Karen started us so beautifully out with last week, we have to begin with ourselves. We do actually have to see that this love is something that we ourselves need to give to ourselves, that becomes part of the ground upon which we stand. And today, we're talking about how you matter to we. You matter to we. You matter in this larger thing that we call life. All of life, you matter to your families, to your workplaces, to your loved ones. You matter in this community. You matter. You make a difference. And it's hard sometimes to see that, isn't it? It's hard to see how we matter in the larger perspective, especially when we are confronted with horrific events that are actually shown to us on the news. We've discovered that the human species is still finding ways to be afraid of each other, to hate each other, and to need other people to be different than they are. And I think the call for us is to be part of the answer, not part of the problem. And when we do that, we make a difference. It does matter. It matters what we do, how we live, how we see it, how we're going to engage. So I'm going to start with this. You know that the turtle didn't get there by itself. So if it wanted to get there, it needed help, didn't it? And if it didn't want to get there, somebody was really cruel to trap it up there. And it will need help getting down, won't it? So as we think of this month of love, this is often how we frame this notion, we matter to we. It makes a difference that when we move beyond just loving ourselves or loving our beloved, we love each other. We seek to care and be compassionate, to be helpful, to not be cruel, to find ways in which to extend and express that feeling of love and how we're supposed to behave. Those things that we learned in kindergarten about, sharing and cleaning up after ourselves and all of those things that we learned as we understood ourselves to be part of a community. And it's interesting having this conversation. We've been having this conversation in our New Testament class as well. We've been reading the teachings of Jesus, and if you go into the Sermon on the Mount and some of his other teachings, they are often read as an ethical or moral prescription about how we are to be to each other, that we are supposed to behave a certain way so that God will favor us, so that we will be blessed, so that we will be seen as holy and pious people. And yet I'm going to suggest that there's actually something entirely different going on. There's something much larger going on, that there's something much more cosmic going on that we are invited into. We're invited into that in the teachings of Jesus. His Sermon on the Mount is not a moralistic, ethical teaching. It's not about how to behave to get God's favor. All of his teachings are primarily designed as a path to consciousness, how to be initiated into the consciousness of wholeness, what is required to be initiated into the consciousness of wholeness, and what it looks like when we live in that place. And what does it mean to live in a consciousness of wholeness, but to recognize oneness, to recognize that we're all one, we're all part of something larger. Maybe this is the we that we're talking about. When we read Howard Thurman, I hope you're reading Howard Thurman. I know it's a little academic. We're going to talk about his big scientific chapter on living structures. We weren't willing to dumb it down for us. I think you can read this, and I'm going to encourage you to do so. He's got some amazing, amazing thesis that he's building through this whole work that is so extraordinary, and you'll recognize it. There's a lot of science of mind that echoes the same thing and perhaps was being pulled from some of these thoughts. And so we're going to explore this notion. What is this we that we're a part of? What does it mean to be a part of it? How do we matter to that? Well, it starts in the beginning, as all these conversations do. In the beginning, how do we know who we are? Who's this we, and how do we matter? Well, we have to answer those questions. Who are we? How did we get here? What's the point of all of this anyway? And of course, so Howard Thurman, in our book, The Search for Common Ground, he talks about two creation stories as sort of example creation stories. All indigenous people, all religions, they all have creation stories. And so he shares the Christian creation story and the Hopi creation story. And there is some deep underlying similarity, not only in these creation stories, but in all creation stories that we find from around the globe. And that is the notion that in the beginning, everything was originally blessed. Right? In the beginning, God said, "Let there be light," and he said it was good. And he created the heavens and the earth, and he said it was good. And this is a deep mystical understanding of this creative reality that is actually good. This is actually something really powerful, this thing that's happening here called the physical universe. And human beings were created, and he called them good, made in the image and likeness of the divine. And in the Hopi tradition, the same thing happens. In the first world, there's this extraordinary sense of just being part of everything. In the second world, when people are created, there's this deep connection. And Spider-Woman comes in, she makes 4 different kinds of people: the red people, black people, white people, and yellow people. And they all have a different language. And yet, in this moment of harmony, this first world, second world time, there's no conflict. They understand each other, and they live in harmony with the animals and with nature itself. And then something happens, doesn't it? Something happens. Somebody says to somebody, maybe you should eat of the apple. Or in the Hopi story, people forget their connectedness, and they start to fight with each other. And there is something that happens that changes everything. And so Howard Thurman says this: the starting point of man on earth is a situation that is orderly, whole, complete, integrated, a climate of community. We have something within our racial memory, within our very DNA as human beings that calls us, that reminds us, that is the echo of that primordial Garden of Eden. That's why we have these stories, because there is something within us that knows. There is something within us that remembers a time, a place, a way, something where we had that experience of being we. And he goes on to say the experience of the race, this is the human race, however, at any moment in time is an acute awareness of the absence of this harmony, isn't it? You just have to look at the news. Terrorism, prejudice, shootings, killings, all kinds of people involved in all kinds of ways, drug cartels, and again, whether it's in our own backyard or somewhere else in the world, we see this disharmony, this loss of the fundamental wholeness and our sense of connectedness, our sense of community. Now, Thurman is going to argue, if you read closely, he's going to argue right along with the science of mind and the Romantic poets and our scientists of today, that this sense of movement from harmony to disharmony, Ernest Holmes calls it our sense of separation, is actually not a fall from grace at all. We weren't kicked out of the garden because we did something wrong. The 4 brothers and sisters of different colors don't argue with each other because something is wrong. We have actually come to this point of separation because it is required for awakening. Separation is required to wake up. To wake up to something that is so deep and so profound that it is beyond just the unconscious life that we have been living. And so it leaves us with the question, but what about us? If we are originally blessed, why do we behave out of fear, prejudice, hatred, and anger? How do we find out who we are? How do we find our way back to community, to wholeness, and to love for each other? So if science has taught us nothing else, the whole theory of evolution goes to teach us that we are part of the whole. We have evolved from the whole into a part. Now science is realizing that we are the part that sees and knows the whole. Actually, we are the whole expressing as a part, masquerading as it were, masquerading as separate. This is where science and spirituality meet. The mystics have known this all along, that there is an underlying implicit order that is the very fabric of the universe, and that our very being, our life, our creation is embedded in that order, that harmony, and that we are constantly not only seeking to go back to that, but we are actually seeking to experience that in our own selves, in our own lives. And science has begun to, with the new biology and the neuroscience and the quantum physics, beginning to see that underneath all of this apparent separation, there is this powerful harmony, this powerful unity. So when you get to Howard Thurman's chapter on the living structures, don't be afraid of the science. It's amazing. It's fascinating. He starts with the biggest possible thing you can imagine, the universe, and he works his way down through the individual body and the organs and the processes right down to the cell. And he reminds us that every cell is its own individual, and yet it's part of the whole. And how is it that each cell knows? How does it know to become strong like bone, or hard like the enamel of our teeth, or soft and liquid like the plasma of our blood, or clear so that we can see out of our eyes? How does the cell know? And do you see what every cell does as it follows its own expression of life matters to the whole, doesn't it? Any cell gone wrong, forgetting that it's a part of the whole, and we have disease. And then we have war. We have fever, we have infection, and we have the seeking to restore harmony and wholeness. And if we can begin to see all of this, do you see, we discover that there is a connectedness, and what we do matters to the we that's beyond the ethical and moral things we've been told as children. We actually discover that even beyond the fact that we are organically part of the whole, this beautiful physical creation, that there is a connectedness even beyond that. That there is a cosmological, spiritual we that we're a part of. So if you've struggled with Howard Thurman's chapter on living structures, or maybe you said, oh, I don't know about the science of all of this, here's another way to experience what he's talking about. So Drannon, if we're ready.
We're all connected to each other biologically, to the earth chemically, to the rest of the universe atomically.
I think nature's imagination is so much greater than man's. He's never gonna let us relax, 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 relax.
We live in an in-between universe where things change alright, but according to patterns, rules, or as we call them, laws of nature.
I'm this guy standing on a planet. Really, I'm just a speck. I'm just a speck compared with a star. The planet is just another speck. To think about all of this, to think about the vast emptiness of space. Billions and billions of stars, billions and billions of specks.
The beauty of a living thing is not the atoms that go into it, but the way those atoms are put together. The cosmos is also within us. We're made of star stuff. We are a way of the cosmos to know itself.
Across the sea of space, the stars are other suns.
We have traveled this way before, and there is much to be learned.
We're all connected to each other biologically, to the earth chemically, to the rest of the universe atomically.
I find it elevating and exhilarating to discover that we live in a universe which permits the evolution of molecular machines as intricate and subtle as we.
I know that the molecules in my body are traceable to phenomena in the cosmos. That makes me want to grab people in the street and say, have you heard this?
The beauty of a living thing is not the atoms that go into it, but the way those atoms are put together. The cosmos is also within us. We're made of star stuff. We are a way of the cosmos to know itself.
There's this tremendous mass of waves all over in space, which is the light bouncing around the room, going from one thing to the other, and it's all really there, really, really there. But you gotta stop and think about it, about the complexity to really get the pleasure. It's all really there, really motivate you to think about all of this, to think about the vast emptiness of space. There's billions and billions of stars, billions and billions of specks.
The beauty of a living thing is not the atoms that go into it, but the way those atoms are put together. The cosmos is also within us. We're made of star stuff. We are a way for the cosmos to know itself.
Across the sea of space, the stars are others. We have traveled this way before, and there is much to be learned.
The beauty of living things is not in the atoms from which it is created, but the way they come together to make the whole. And the way that whole has distributed itself into or as the very individual atoms, the very individual realities of all of life, of all creation. That is the beauty of living things. You see, and one of the things that we understand from science is this trajectory of evolution as it meets spirituality and it meets the understanding of the mystics. We see that there is actually a directionality, and it is toward life, wholeness, connection, creation. It is toward growth and movement. All of evolution teaches us that this movement is toward good, the expression of life. In the science of mind, we call that love. That's what we call love. The movement toward life. The movement together, collectively, between us, among us, toward that which creates more love, more joy, more health, more peace, more good, more prosperity, more of whatever we might want to think of that would allow us to experience ourselves and each other as joyful, whole, and happy beings. Not more consuming, more life. The cosmos is also within us. We are made of stardust. We are the way for the cosmos to know itself. We are the way for the cosmos to know itself. We are individualized expressions of the whole, becoming parts so that the whole can see itself. Just as we can see our bodies and see all the individual cells and see how beautifully they work together and celebrate each one, we are that whole, seeing all the individual and unique ways that it's showing up and expressing itself. And so, what about us? What's our part in this? How do we see ourselves in this? When we recognize that this separation is required, this separation from the Eden of harmony is required, because oneness is becoming conscious. Do you see, in the Edenic experience, Adam and Eve aren't represented as knowing that they're walking and talking with God. It's God calling. Pay attention. You see, in this racial memory that we have deep in our inheritance, deep in our DNA, about this place of oneness, that experience was a just Edenic, unconscious experience of the whole, like we have as babies, as children. Separation is required for us to wake up to who we truly are. Do you see? then our oneness, our recognition of the whole, that we are part of the we, whether it's this we of the community, this we of the human race, or this we of the cosmos, you see, we awaken to, oh, that's who we are. That's who you are. That's what's really, in fact, going on. Howard Thurman says, since we are not only living in the universe, but the universe is living in us, it follows then that man and woman is an organic part of the universe, an organic part of the whole, as necessary a piece of the whole as any individual cell of our body, as any organ or system of our body, as any part of an ecosystem, as we see how intricately interconnected it is. And so what is called for is this awakening to the truth of our being, this awakening to consciousness, this awakening to our inherent embeddedness in creation, in the universe, in this whole, this awakening. That we don't love each other because we were told to as kids. We don't love each other because it's the right thing to do. We don't love each other because we're supposed to. We love each other. We love community. We love life itself because that out there is the same as what's in here. Do you see? It's the cosmos. But we have to wake up to it. We have to become aware of this truth. That when we look at that person that is so frustrating to us, or we look at the news and we want to point at those people, and yes, they are doing horrific things. Those things that they are doing is not okay. But can we see what happens when an organism turns in on itself? How many teens I've worked with who are cutters because of the pain. You watch the news, you see the human race going through it itself as a whole. Those are our cutters. They are expressing our pain as a whole. And we can say that behavior is not okay, but can we see the truth of who each person is? Do you see? Regardless of whether they're wielding a knife or a gun, or whether they have skin a different color or a different faith. So what about us? What about us? What's our choice going to be? What are we going to decide? Howard Thurman says this amazing thing. It just blew my socks off. He says, innocence is unconscious. Right? Our kids are unconscious when they're cute and they're little babies, and they're just so cute. They're so innocent. They're completely unconscious. They are not aware of not doing something correctly or appropriately. And then they grow up. And then they get to be teenagers. Right? We've all been there. We've all been there, done it. And if we didn't do it in our teen years, sure enough, we made up for it in our 20s. Right? Okay. Innocence is unconscious. What is that whole developmental process for? It is to teach us the power and consequences of our choices. He says goodness is chosen. Now, this isn't just a moralistic goodness, but this is choosing to behave in a way that is harmonious in the community, whatever community, the community of me and you, the community of this community, the family, the nation, the planet, the cosmos. You see, goodness is chosen, and we experience that choice, well, by experiencing all the other choices, right? Going, oh, that didn't work, oh, that didn't work, oh, that was bad, oh, no, that was not good. And we see that, we experience it for ourselves, and we have that engagement with others. No, you can't speak to me like that. No, you can't behave like that in my house. No, you cannot smoke in my house. You have to smoke outside. I remember when I had the courage to tell that to my father. You cannot smoke in my house. Right? You cannot behave in terroristic ways, or it's not okay. But I didn't stop loving my father. Do you see? Innocence is unconscious. goodness is chosen. We have to learn to decide to have our actions matter to the we, not just the little we, not just our immediate in-group of whoever that is, but to the we. So, this is our call to a common humanity and our common nature in the cosmos. We are called to love. Love all humanity, love all beings everywhere because it matters, because it makes a difference to the we that we are a part of, to whatever we are a part of, whether it's the community, our culture, our human race, and most importantly, cosmologically. Howard Thurman goes on to argue that this is one of the reasons why the whole identification of groups has become so enlivened. When we think of gay and lesbian power, black power, we think of me, of we, of identification, self-identification, then the gangs and our young people in gangs, and how much that is that inherent sense that we have that we are part of a we. And if we don't find that cosmologically, and we don't find that spiritually, we will find it in our separateness. Do you see? We'll find it in our separateness. I'm gonna get with mine, because here's a we I can relate to. Because you out there, you're different. Do you see? So it is the shift into that cosmological, that spiritual understanding of who we are that allows us to transcend those barriers, those boundaries, that seeming sense of separation that we have, not only from life and from God, but from each other. Tracy Brown will continue to be exploring this beautifully in our Wednesday series. Please don't miss it. She's an extraordinary teacher, facilitator, and she has much to share as we go deeper. Decide to love yourself. Decide to love all humanity. Not because it's the moral and ethical thing to do, but because the truth is there's nobody out there. In that sense, do you see? When I love myself, it's possible for me to love you. And when I love you, in some way, I'm actually loving me. Not the little me, not the egoic me, but the me that is the individualized expression of the whole. Because you're a part of that too. And so what happens as we begin to awaken to consciousness, and we begin to awaken to this awareness, and we begin to awaken to these truths, we begin to want to experience this and express this. And part of what happens on Sunday mornings is we have this little tiny moment where we wow, what if life was always like this? Right? And we feel connected and lifted and joy-filled, and we can look at every person in the room and say, I love you, I see you, I know you. And it's like a microcosm of what's possible. And then sometimes people say to me, well, yeah, and then, it's Monday morning and I go out into the world. Right? But that's the very thing that we have to overcome. And so we create utopian dreams. We create dreams about how it might be, what it might be like, and then people call us Pollyannish. That's silly, it's never going to happen. Well, there's always going to be war. There's always going to be poverty on the planet. It's just the way it is. And we're told that we're just dreamers and silly and we don't have any idea. Or then we're said, well, that utopian dream that you have, you just want me to be like you. You want me to see it like you, but I don't. And that's really just a guise for control. And yet it doesn't leave us, does it? Because we have a racial memory, a DNA memory, a memory embedded in our very being from that oneness, out of that sense of separation that is awakening us, there is a call back to that oneness. There is something compelling us into the creation of that community. Martin Luther King called it the beloved community, the community of all people on the planet, the community of all beings everywhere. And we can call it a dream, and we can try to imagine it. And yet that is the awakening, do you see? If you are the cosmos waking up to see itself, isn't harmony and order and love and the expression of life what you want to see when you look at yourself as the universe? So while we admit that there are horrendous things being shown in the news and being shown around the world, we shall not believe that this is the truth of our being. We shall not believe that this is the truth of humanity, that this is the truth in the very heart of creation. We shall not believe that this is all that we can be to each other. So we can actually turn ourselves to a place where we can imagine something different. We can actually envision that wholeness being expressed in the world as love, but as more than that, as a reality that we can work toward, that builds the bridges, that heals the separation, that brings about community. In the Science of Mind, the Centers for Spiritual Living in CSLDallas, we call this our global heart vision. I'm going to invite you to imagine this global heart vision with me. This will be our closing, so you can close your eyes if you choose, or you can simply imagine. We envision the emergence of the global heart to balance and guide the further evolution of humanity. As stewards of our planet and all its inhabitants. We see a world free of homelessness, violence, war, hunger, separation, and disenfranchisement of any kind. We see a world in which there is a generous and continuous sharing of heart and resources. We envision a world in which forgiveness, whether for errors, injustices, or debts, is the norm. We see a world in which borders are irrelevant. We see a world which has renewed its emphasis on beauty, nature, and love through the resurgence of creativity, art, and aesthetics. We see a world in which fellowship with all life prospers and connects through the guidance of spiritual wisdom and experience. We envision a world in which we live and grow as one global family that respects and honors the interconnectedness of all life. And we envision ourselves as a bridge across the illness and illusion of separation, thereby dynamically empowering the vision of global heart. We envision our communities as united and actuated by this compelling vision of a healthy world, a world experiencing global heart. And we are ardently committed to bringing this vision forth through our ministries and our transformative teachings. We see ourselves as a global community of inspired individuals caring for and about each other and the entire planetary family, thereby bringing the gift of active compassion and kindness to the world. Our local ministries and communities become points of inspiration and influence, effectively advancing the vision of the global heart to the benefit and expression of life. And so we imagine that it's possible to be a part of the whole and to allow that whole to shine so brightly through us that it is a light of inspiration in the world. And that whether it's in our lifetime or another lifetime doesn't make a difference. What makes a difference is what each one of us does and sees. Because when we imagine this together, it matters. And we make a difference.